I have two choices. Either you see my haircut or I promote my t-shirt and we talk like this. Hi everyone, in today's video I'm gonna help you choose your class in Lost Ark. I cannot believe that we got to a point where I can finally have this video for the Western version of the game. It's so surreal. In case you're new to my channel, nice to meet you. My nickname is Saivo. I've been playing, enjoying and covering Lost Ark on my channel since 2018, and I want to extend a warm welcome to you in case you're new to the game in general, from myself and from the community's behalf as well. And a special thank you to all of you who are members of my YouTube channel with the paid membership every month. Your support is just off the roof nice, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for it. Now let's get into the classes of the game. Lost Ark has base classes, 5 to be precise, these ones right here, and upon hitting level 10 in game, each of these 5 base classes gives you an opportunity to choose one of the advanced classes each of them have, which this advanced class is going to be your class and for the rest of that character's life in game. You cannot change your class, you cannot add a secondary class in the game, etc. Rumor has it that for the Western release of the game, one of these 5 base classes is going to have one more advanced class, so we will have 15 advanced classes in total for the release. If that becomes true, I will have a separate short video covering this extra 15th advanced class, which I will link in the description below. Lost Ark does not have a healer, tank, DPS holy trinity. However, there are a couple of classes in the game that can support and even heal with a couple of skills, and also one class that feels like a tank from other MMORPGs, even though it's not really one. A couple of other important things to note before we jump right into the classes. Number one, every single class in Lost Ark can and will finish all content in the game. There are of course differences, big differences in between each of these classes, but they are not in the lines of will I be able to finish this or not. Number two, almost every skill that every class has in the game is an AoE skill because of the way combat works in the game. Having that said, there are classes which have a stronger AoE presence than others, and this is important to a certain degree because at endgame in Lost Ark you do have the opportunity to farm a lot of dungeons which have thousands of mobs, and maybe for you playing a class that's stronger in the AoE department is a criteria for choosing your class, so I will mention it during my guide. Number 3, Lost Ark started as a gender-locked game, and this is an ongoing process to change that. It will take some time before every single advanced class in the game has its other gender counterpart. For example, us in the West, we are getting one such gender-unlocked class. The Gunslinger advanced class, part of the Gunner base class, is the female version of the Deadeye class. Number 4 and last, I would like to mention that classes have synergies between them in terms of what buffs they provide to the group or what debuffs they can bring with them for a boss fight, for example. And these synergies are kind of taken in consideration by players at the end game of end games when content actually gets hard, when building a party. This is also the reason why you don't see in Lost Ark a party that has a double of the same DPS class, because these buffs and debuffs that they bring don't stack with each other. Let's get into the classes now. Warrior base class, which at level 10 gives you a choice in between Berserker, Paladin and Gunlancer. Berserker first, simply because the meme is that everyone should main one. They are a melee DPS class that wears a heavy armor, same as all warriors do, and a huge greatsword. Very badass class in terms of looks and sounds alike. Of course, size comes with consequences, so they are not the fastest class in game in terms of attack speed and animations, which means you'll have to occasionally be careful. Not to mention that a Berserker is one of the squishiest classes out of the heavy metal, slower, tanky ones in the game, but at the same time they are actually one of the quicker ones from the same tanky slowy bunch. Hand washes hand basically. Easy to learn and not that hard to master either, which makes it a top choice for new players and in general a top choice period. A Berserker has access to really good damage and a lot of AoE, the real kind of AoE where it's actually longer range, wider in angles, easy to do, even all around you, grabs all mobs and not just some, etc., which makes you, behind the keyboard, feel like you're actually doing good on a Berserker. And chances are you're probably right. As for PvP, most times you're just gonna have a blast. Sometimes though, you're gonna die chasing sharpshooters, but that's okay too. Berserker is perfectly suited for a player who enjoys a more aggressive combat style, where you're kinda tanky but not the tankiest, kinda mobile but not very much mobile. Moving on to Paladin now, one of the two support classes currently in the game alongside the Bard. We're going to talk about that later. This is a hybrid melee and medium range class when it comes to skill range, but you will be supporting mostly, which is the thing you excel at. Paladins wear a one-handed sword and a book. They use the sword for blue skills, which are mostly melee range and have no supportive perks, and the book to cast the golden skills, which are mostly the ones you're gonna support with. Your focus, however, will be supporting and, of course, same as every other class, participating to the CC phases and mechanics in most group content. The class is harder to play for several reasons. Not only you need to know all the mechanics for yourself to avoid them like every other DPS, but you also need to have a clear mind to place or cast your supportive skills at key times. Some of your supportive skills are telegraphs on the ground, so you need to place them at the right spot, and bosses move a lot. Also, placing it over a puddle of lava because you didn't know the mechanic is coming there is not good either. Some of these supportive abilities have cast times, and in general you are a slower, bulkier kind of class with only one mobility skill, so that means you'll have to have great positioning during fights in order to finish your casts, or even worse, maybe you're gonna get locked in animations and die. I guess a healer mentality, in air quotes, from other MMORPGs is needed here. As for PvP, the same applies. A good support class that works great with most comps. Plus, you'll have more freedom to DPS and CC in PvP because builds differ from PvE to PvP content. As a Paladin, you're the support who gives more offense to groups, and the class goes great with players who enjoy this role. A class that looks and sounds I guess slightly angelic, and feels that you're actually wearing a heavy armor, but you somehow still need to pull out a book and read it to your groupies. Moving on to Gunlancer, the tankiest class in the game, melee kind of playstyle, wears a gun lance and a shield, and is the closest you'll get at this time to a tank from other MMORPGs. Many defensive abilities for yourself and the group, some interesting mechanics where you can avoid damage by blocking it at the right time, so you can imagine that this class loves to get hit by things. You're gonna have access to a couple of taunts too, which are very useful to cancel some boss mechanics, and as a result, keeping the boss on the spot for more DPS uptime that stay at the back of it. The game considers a Gunlancer a DPS class, and they're not really too shabby at it either, but don't expect you're gonna be rocking the charts at #1 as a Gunlancer, and that's perfectly fine, because you are in fact a hybrid that brings his own decent, nice DPS and also gives a lot to the group overall. The class is not that hard to understand mechanically speaking, but at the same time you are sort of in the same boat as supports are, where on top of everything that a DPS needs to do and know in terms of mechanics, you also have extra responsibilities, such as cast your taunts at the right exact time so they can have value and actually interrupt something. Cast your group abilities, your group boons or defensive abilities at the right time, not before or after. So this makes the class harder, let's say, than a DPS class. In PvP, you're very annoying and do some decent deeps, always frontline, disrupting the opponents, making sure your DPS have an easier time to get close and hitting their spells, peeling for them. You're quite slow though, but with the right player behind the keyboard, you're just gonna have a blast. Gunlancer is a perfect fit for players who enjoy the tank feel from other MMORPGs and a slower, more calculated, disruptive kind of playstyle. We're moving on to the next base class, which is the Martial Artist. As the name implies, all classes here have this martial arts vibe to their gameplay. Very interesting. First one, the War Dancer, a melee that wears light gauntlets as weapons and is one of the fastest classes in our release in terms of attack speed, animation speed, and mobility as well. Many Korean players believe that classes which are fast or mobile are easier to play because of that. They never get locked in animations, nor do they mind if they miss one of their skills, as cooldowns are short so they can cast it again later, and I can understand the logic, but in my opinion, I believe it's a tough class to really get to shine on. Besides the fact that you're squishy, your attacks are more concentrated, and as such positioning is key because you don't have that immense radius for all of your attacks, and when you need to be close, reaction time also needs to, you know, step up its game. The combat though is very enjoyable. You feel like you're flowing with the wind with your skills, and combos are also a thing with War Dancers, noticeable especially in PvP where you need to have a in and out approach as opposed to full ham. Managing cooldowns is important because you don't have an eject button like many other classes do, so getting caught unprepared or in the middle of things in PvP means you actually just died. You also provide a crit chance and an attack speed buff to allies, which is very nice to have in both PvE and PvP content. Fits great with players who enjoy a fast-paced combat, high risk, high reward kind of thing, needs a cautious approach to PvP, sort of a killer approach to it, but when you do it right, it's like a wow moment that you don't really get to see in many other classes. Next advanced class is the Scrapper, a melee DPS which wears heavy gauntlets as weapons, the angry version of a War Dancer, if you may. Not that they have anything in common, but Scrapper simply feels heavier, let's say. With that comes slightly longer animations, slightly fewer mobility skills, cooldowns, and so on. When I think about Lost Ark in general as a game, Scrapper is like the poster class that comes to my mind. Maybe because I've just seen so many when I started playing the game, maybe it's something else. Regardless, it's a very nice class to play, very well rounded, to a point where you will have equally much fun in PvE and PvP because it's equally as good in both. Easy to learn and understand at a theoretical level, but needs a few weeks of practice to really get into balancing your chi, and even though there is some sort of order your skills should be used in, I believe it's one of the best classes for new players to experience the game on. Sounds great, looks great, feels just right, perfect for a player who enjoys a martial arts gameplay on a sort of a bully class that's actually very well rounded. Lastly, from the Martial Artist is the Soul Fist, a melee DPS that also has access to quite some range skills, so it feels more like a hybrid, even though you'll never only going to get to play ranged, for example. In many people's opinion, the Soul Fist is a jack of all trades, a master of none, so I'm gonna say the same thing as I said since 2019 about them. They are a jack of all trades and a master of one at a time, whatever trait they wish to master. I believe this is a phenomenal advanced class. It gives you so many options for so many different situations that you'll always be able to customize it for what you want to get out of it. I also believe it's a hard class to master, not very straightforward to really, let's say, get your role and which skill to use now and especially why. In other regions there were a lot of people trying it, not many kept at it until the end, but my god, when you saw that special someone who was a Soul Fist and really understood it, absolutely glorious. In my opinion, a great class in PvE and great in PvP too. I love Assault Fist for its style, ability and history in Lost Ark, and I highly recommend you give it a try. No hard feelings if you don't like it, it's really not for everyone, but definitely worth giving it a try. Perfectly suited for a player who enjoys a martial arts gameplay with a dash of magic to it. Melee when you're going for the jugular, ranged when you're just fishing. Sort of a I'm just smarter than you kind of gameplay. Very interesting. Next base class is the Gunner, which branches out into Gunslinger, Artillerist, Deadeye and Sharpshooter. I'm gonna take both Gunslinger and Deadeye together as they are the male and female versions of each other, so they are similar, but I will explain also the differences. As a weapon, both Gunslinger and Deadeye have 3 of them, a set of 2 pistols, a shotgun and a sniper rifle. Pistols and shotgun have a short to medium range, while sniper can be used from very far away. Each of these 3 weapons comes with a set of different skills and range to it, so it's quite an unique experience to have to constantly swap the weapon that's to the weapon that's the most fitting for the situation. They are considered as a ranged class, but in reality, you're gonna spend half your time close up to your enemies. Well, in PvE, everyone is together close up anyway, so range doesn't really matter there. But in PvP, you're gonna have to approach your target very often to get off important skills. Gunslingers have an advantage in terms of range because all of their sniper skills are actually really good compared to a Deadeye's. So you're gonna spend a bit fewer time close up if you're playing Gunslinger in terms of PvP content. It's fine either way though, because you're one of the most mobile classes in the game, so you can get away once you master the gameplay. Shotgun skills, however, provide more value in the hands of a Deadeye. Because of the traits and the class configuration options that you have, they do more damage from behind, for example, which is a great asset in PvE content especially. Weapon swapping is also different for the 2 classes, Gunslinger and Deadeye. You do it at different intervals and for different reasons too. I personally find both of these classes harder to play than most others because of the weapon swap mechanic and the fast fingers you need in general, low ping, sprinkled with a dash of your squishy, but you get used to it, and if you play it seriously for some time, you're not gonna have problems. Both Gunslinger and Deadeye are fitting for players who enjoy a fast-paced combat. Guns, the Wild Wild West, a hybrid playstyle with 3 weapons to manage, and who want to maybe take on a little bit of a challenge mastering these classes, especially the Deadeye. Next advanced class is the Artillerist here. They use a 2-handed machine gun style weapon that also transforms into a flamethrower. And a rocket launcher. Ranged class with just the right amount of, let's say, mid to short range skills. The ultimate boy's dream, I have to say. The class is easy to understand at a theoretical level, nothing quirky or mechanically difficult in terms of gameplay. But when it comes to actually playing it, things get a little bit interesting. On top of the fact that the class is slow in terms of skill animations, mobility, etc., many of the artillery skills are targeted at an area, and from the moment you cast them to the moment when they go off, things happen in Lost Ark. Life changes, dynasties fall. A boss in PvE might move away from your targeted area due to a mechanic. A player in PvP will most likely move away from it, and there's quite some skills that behave like this for the artillerist. You need what I would call tribal intuition or a flawless execution, or luck to pull off everything, but if you do, I believe this class has the potential to do amazing damage in PvE content, on top of the fact that it has monstrous AoE capabilities. PvP, well, that's a little bit of a different story. I've seen artillerists in the highest PvP rank, sure, not very many of them at all, but people sort of prefer to play classes that are somewhat more straightforward, without this she loves me not kind of factor. You can imagine that the higher you climb in PvP rank, the better players you're gonna meet, so it gets harder. But a smarter player than me once said, Grandmaster wish you achieve with artillerist? adjust your playstyle need you to the situation. And he's probably right. I personally love this class since I tried it for the first time in 2018 and up until today. I think it's a lot of fun, quite survivable even if not mobile, high DPS if you hit all of your things, and most importantly, one of the most unique gameplay experiences in Lost Ark and in MMORPGs in general. Quite frankly, the only other MMO where I've seen something similar before is Guild Wars 2 with the Engineer. Fits perfectly with a player that enjoys a slower paced combat with a lot of control and big numbers on the screen if you hit. Amazing for AoE damage, as I said. A player who is okay with the highs being really high and the lows being quite embarrassing. Next advanced class is the Sharpshooter. The Ranger class from other MMORPGs, a ranged class that wears a special kind of bow, more of a modern or futuristic one as opposed to what you've seen before in other games that made out of wood and stuff, and has a pet hawk to help him out. The only class that has a hide mechanic out of the classes we're getting at launch for EUNA, and that comes in very much handy for PvP content. Speaking about PvP, on top of the hide, you also have range to your advantage, where you can sometimes be so far that you're not even on the screen. A very mobile class as well, but as much as it's mobile, it's squishy also. PvE content feels great as a Sharpshooter. For some reason, the class is exactly as you would, let's say, expect a Ranger to be. Very familiar if I think about it, but with a touch of Lost Ark to it. Performs well in all aspects of the game, perfectly fit for a player who has played Rangers before and liked it, or someone who enjoys a back of the line, stealthy kind of gameplay, evasive, where you actually play as such to not even take any damage, while still being very impactful to the match, the PvP match, for example. The class has really nice AoE also, by the way. Moving on to the Mage base class, which contains the Bard and the Summoner. Bards are the other support class in game, the first support class that was available in Lost Ark since day one, for quite some time until Paladin came about. Bards use a harp, but you cannot miss that, as everything you'll be hearing all day long are harp notes. The class has an interesting playstyle with a variety of, let's say, visual range to their skills, and of course the interesting bard type experience, but you are expected to be a support in most PvE content and bring some support skills in PvP too, as opposed to the Paladin, which is, let's say, slightly better for the offensive side of the group. Bards are slightly better at keeping groups alive. I find the gameplay of the Bard is smoother, maybe a little bit more familiar, not so hiccupy as the Paladin, but again, that might just be me. Again, having a support in your group makes things so much better for everyone, so playing a Bard or a Paladin guarantees that you'll play a wanted and needed class. In terms of difficulty, supports are, in my opinion, as I've talked in the Paladin section, harder to play than DPS classes, because you have to take care of others too on top of yourself. Not to mention some skills need to be cast at the exact right timing, not just pressed off cooldown like you do with some DPS classes. Bards will fit perfectly for a player who wants to support, likes that, enjoys these harp sounds, and also enjoys to be needed and wanted in groups. Next class is the Summoner, a ranged DPS class that uses a stave as a weapon. As the name suggests, the class can summon various, mostly AI controlled pets to help in combat. I say mostly AI controlled because some of these pets do have, let's say, one follow-up skill that you can use yourself after summoning them by pressing the same button as you've summoned them with. So one pet, for example, can charge an opponent and stun them, another pet can detonate itself on your command, etc. The class is quite easy to play and master, very fun and joyful too, and extremely pleasing visually due to the fantastic skill animations it has, not to mention that it sounds really good as well. Great AoE skills for the summoners, not as squishy as you'd expect from a mage, and quite rewarding to play, as you will somehow always do damage due to your pets, even if you're busy avoiding mechanics or, you know, breaking some ankles in PvP, which is something that you have to do. Very immobile though, but then again, you have your pets as backup and a few tricks up your sleeve if you want to. I personally love PvP on Summoner, even though it has never really been considered as a top tier class, so for PvP, so your expectations should be accordingly. A great fit for a player who enjoys a slightly chaotic and very beautiful gameplay with a little bit of AI controlled drama to it. The last base class we're talking about is the Assassin, which at level 10 gives you a choice in between a Shadow Hunter and the Deathblade. May I just say, though, right from the bat, what a beautiful visual orgy the Shadow Hunter is. I mean, it's just boom boom boom, pow pow, splash, pshoo, of dark bloody goodness. This is a hybrid melee mid-range DPS class with access to some range skills that are great to set up your melee approach, for example, in terms of PvP. Good damage as well, on top of the very exciting gameplay that it brings. Worth mentioning that Shadow Hunters have the ability to transform into the possessed version of themselves, at which point you hurt people, and as such no one wants to be around you. Quite easy to learn and master, and the class itself is quite direct and helpful to the player, so a great choice for new players and experienced alike. When the Assassin came out initially in Korea, I felt that the gameplay of the Assassin classes is very similar to what the martial artist classes do, and I still feel that way today, but the ideas behind the Assassins are unique and the visuals are unique and great too. A new player to Lost Ark won't really feel the way I do. The class has really nice AoE also, by the way. Goes hand in glove with someone who enjoys a balanced gameplay in between caution and aggressiveness. Great visuals and audio with a feels good vibe to the class in general. Lastly, we have the Deathblade, a sword fighter type assassin. Reminds me a lot of Blade Master from Blade and Soul. Mobile, squishy, with a fast-paced combo-like combat. Really fun actually. Quite helpful to the party too, as it gives an attack speed buff and an extra damage debuff to players or bosses, which is great with so many compositions. Not that hard to play or master, and perfect fit for a player who likes a fast-paced combat and a fulfilling playing experience that's not that hard to achieve. And these were my thoughts on the classes in Lost Ark. I hope this video gave you a little bit of a direction in terms of where to look for a class that fits you. I would also like to mention that in terms of balance for both PvE content and PvP, I believe that us in the West were quite blessed to get the game now when we get it, because Lost Ark is in the best state balance-wise that it's ever been in, so you're not really gonna be forced or advised to play a class that, you know, just play that one, because that and the other one is the only two that perform well. So I'm very happy for that. I wish you guys lots of love. Thank you so much again for watching. If you have any other questions that I might not have answered in this video, I will wait for them in the description below. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you really soon. Take care.